So it is now a quarter century since Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone came out. As of last weekend, it is now exactly 25 years since that changed literary culture forever, I would say. How much of a Harry Potter fan would you say you are?
Well, I read all of the books when I was younger. I remember getting them the day they came out and sitting and reading them all day. So I enjoyed them then, but I feel like I've got everything I could have out of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like as a grown man, it's a little bit embarrassing to, enjoy kids' stories. Although the nostalgia...
I completely disagree with that point, but do carry on.
No, I think it's because I've already seen them before,
Yes.
and like revisiting them,
I
there's
don't
not much
want
to
or
gain.
need any more Harry Potter.
Yes,
I think I enjoyed
that's
Harry
where I'm
Potter
at.
as it was meant to be enjoyed, as a great story and an imaginative world, not a Bible or a political compass or anything like that. And that's where a lot of people have gone wrong. But I think we talk so often about the bad things, the depressing things and so on, and occasionally it's good to just stop and think, actually, there's been some amazing things that we've been privileged to enjoy in our lives, and I want to talk about them a bit. So I've spoken about Harry Potter before on the Lotus Eaters, as you can see here. I did a video pointing out that Hogwarts would fail its Ofsted inspection, and that actually says a bit more about our health and safety and education standards than it does necessarily about Hogwarts.
For those who aren't in Britain, the Ofsted inspectors are like the government inspectors making sure that the school is up to standard.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, so let's just start with J.K. Rowling. Where else would you start talking about Harry Potter? And she tweeted recently, 25 years ago today, I saw Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in a bookstore, Waterstones, Princes Street, Edinburgh, for the first time. It was one of the best moments of my life. Thank you, Bloomsbury Books, for taking a chance on a total unknown. That's nice, isn't it? That's heartwarming. A picture of the first edition cover. Although I think
that was a similar edition to the one I had when I was
That's the
younger.
picture I had, yeah. I had absolutely no idea, she continues, what was coming as I stood dumbstruck in that bookshop, staring at my name on the spine of a published novel. Thank you to every single reader who boarded the Hogwarts Express in 1997 and stuck with Harry until the very end. What a journey it was. Well, that's nice, isn't it? And plenty of Harry Potter fans rolled in to share their love for the Wizarding World.
Darren Grimes down there sending a heart to J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, and plenty of fans rolled in to share their love and their gratitude to its creator. Here we have... I read the Harry Potter books as an adult and was thoroughly mesmerised. I can only imagine the awe, wonder, and sheer joy felt by children totally engrossed in the Wizarding World and the love of reading it instilled in so many. Another says, thank you, Joe. I owe you for everything. I was 4 and non-verbal with severe autism. I didn't speak for the first 5 years of my life, but in 1997 to 99, I had the first 3 read to me. I'm one of the first generation of readers, my first prince and my favourite, Happy Harry Potter 25. That's, again, really
very
heartwarming.
wholesome, isn't it? Yeah.
And there are so many instances of this. I've heard the stories over the years of people who have really found a refuge in Harry Potter, and it's drawn them out of their shell, and they've become more literate and more engaged with the world and language and so on, and that's really heartwarming. Some people, of course, weren't quite so supportive. As we have Amy Ban They Them #transrights saying she's still changing lives to this very day for the worse, and there are quite a few of these opinions, but I didn't really want to dwell on them because we talk about them every day and everyone's a bit fed up with them now, I think. So Harry Potter might not be everyone's cup of tea, though. If you're still watching the video, I imagine there's a strong selection bias of those who do like it, but it is a mass cultural phenomenon like the Beatles or like the Lord of the Rings or the Council of Claremont. For history nerds. It started a series of movies that made the careers of child actors Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and especially Emma Watson. And as someone says here, Nathan Bow, Rowling's control over the 7-book series spanning from 96 to 2000 is remarkable. Even more amazing, she became the world's first author billionaire. She then gave away so much money that she lost her billionaire status. And they have a nice graphic there of the money that Harry Potter has made. I mean, look at that. Billions and billions of pounds.
I like that the books are almost parallel with the films as well. That rarely happens. Maybe, I don't know whether, I suppose Tolkien his books would have been sold for such a long time that I'm not sure it'd be a fair comparison, but that's one of the cases where the books and films are probably parallel with one another.
But why do you think that is in the case of Harry Potter?
I think because the standard of the films and the books were really good. I think they each had their own charm to them, and it's not like if you read the books you didn't want to see the films. I think there was a lot of sort of back and forth between the two, weren't there? If you liked the books, normally you'd see the films, and also the books came out at around the right time to still capitalise on the film viewing, in that it was a few years before the film would come out. So you'd read the book almost like as a bit of a spoiler for the film coming out a few years down the line.
Was it 2001 the first Harry Potter film came out, around that time?
Something like that, yeah.
And then there were another 6 years until the series finished. So because it was such a long-running series, that you were able to have a virtuous cycle of the two things building into each other and supporting each other.
Exactly, yes.
But also I think there's a lot contained in the books that doesn't make it into the films. The sort of British humour, the clever interweaving of plots and subplots, the characterisation and so on. There's a lot there that just can't really be crammed into a film without losing a lot of the substance. And that's why I think partly the books have made so much and are almost on par with the box office. But you know what you say about good deeds and who become heroes. You live long enough and you see yourself become the villain. And I think that's pretty much what happened to J.K. Rowling, at least from the progressive side of the aisle. And here we have an article by Helen Lewis, who was, you may know as the woman who interviewed Jordan Peterson in that video that YouTube wants me to see 1,000 times for some reason, which went quite viral. And she is coming at this from a feminist perspective, but I'll let you judge what she's saying rather than her herself.
It's also worth pointing out, it's not Kathy Newman, not the So What You're Saying Is.
Yeah, not that one.
Different, terrible female journalist.
In this article, she attempts to elucidate how J.K. Rowling became Voldemort. So she says here, as the 20th century ended in the liberal West, the tenets of feminism seemed irrefutable to me. Of course, I would go to university and get a job. A family would come later, if at all. My mother, by contrast, had her first child at 25. Gay rights were the same. Why on earth couldn't two men get married? In my 20s, when the God Delusion came out, I bought it immediately. I was proud to call myself an atheist. Religion was nothing but a tool of patriarchal oppression. So you immediately see who we're listening to. And I think it's worth pointing out that J.K. Rowling is more along this line, I think, than she's not a conservative, of course. She's not a right-winger or anything like that. This is more the sort of milieu, I think, that
She's
Rowling's
more of a
from.
turf, really, isn't she?
Yeah, I think so. Younger millennials, those born around 1990, the same time as Harry Potter's lead actors Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson, feel just as strongly about transgender rights. To many of them, it is the social justice cause, their generation's revolutionary idea. Do you think that's true?
I wouldn't be here if it was.
Well, no, the idea that they feel strongly about it, that it's just another wave of the revolution.
No, I think most people are completely indifferent, probably a bit weirded out, and they don't want to weigh in because they see that if they have an opinion about it that isn't kosher, which most of them aren't, then they're going to get screeched at, maybe lose their job.
Yeah, get smited down.
Yeah, no one really wants to stick their neck out for it unless they're frothing at the mouth and a leftist.
I don't think younger millennials generally feel strongly about transgender rights. I think it's a small fraction of rabid ideologues who the rest of us have to deal with. And she continues, and millennials dominate the Harry Potter fandom, a community large enough to have spawned hundreds of thousands of pieces of fan fiction. So it is unsurprising that two major fan sites, the Leaky Cauldron and MuggleNet, have distanced themselves from the book's author J.K. Rowling after she argued last month that woman should remain a biological category. Dun dun dun!
Such controversial opinions there.
Yeah, author can define woman, immediately blacklisted. It's just mad. The two sites announced last week that they will remove her photograph from their site, stop linking to her website and writing about her other endeavours, and tag Twitter posts that include news about her with the hashtag JKR, so users can filter out triggering content from their social media feeds. Just ludicrous, right? How do I even begin? Like, we all know what's wrong with that. Like, the sheer ingratitude, the sheer attempt to gerrymander reality to try and erase the author from her own creation. It's mad. To preserve their love of Harry Potter, its fans must erase its author, as even this feminist can see is a bit weird. Rowling, like Voldemort, is so evil that even mentioning her violates a taboo. She who must not be named.
I hope that's being said ironically.
Yeah, I know. It is, but it's a very good point. That is kind of where we're at. The fandom, like, they love Harry Potter. They've made it a cornerstone of their lives, almost a religious experience. And yet they cannot cope with the fact that the author exists and doesn't agree with them on trans rights.
I mean, you don't have to agree with someone to enjoy their work. I don't agree with John Lennon beating his wife, but I still listened to the Beatles. You can separate the person from the music, and it's not like he's alive anymore, and I'm giving him money. I suppose, at least in the case of J.K. Rowling, when you buy her books, she gets some money out of it.
I don't think she really notices. I think you boycotting J.K. Rowling's book affects her absolutely zero, rounded to the nearest significant figure.
I don't think she's strapped for cash, no.
No, she's definitely not, despite her charitable endeavours. And she comes along with this beautiful quote, which is exactly what you expect. "It is understandable that transgender people feel weary and harassed. Their identities and their bodies have been conscripted into a culture war." And I just want to say BS to that. It's not transgender people who are weary and harassed. It's trans activists who are weary and harassed as a mode of existence. And I don't feel they've been conscripted into a culture war. Very often they're at the forefront of it, these activists.
They started it.
Exactly. How can they then say, oh no, we're just victims of this thing. We don't want to do this. But you just have to absolutely adhere to these points on the trans issue. Otherwise you are just dead to me. Yeah, no, these people are really...
It's horrific gaslighting, isn't it?
Yeah. Many feminists who support Rowling feel the same, but a ceasefire isn't possible without confronting and resolving the questions Rowling posed. So, good, basically. So we have a feminist here who is trying desperately to not be cancelled when she covers this issue while she's making her money writing for The Atlantic. But even she realises that, yeah, actually you do have to kind of confront the question of what is a woman. Instead of a respectful discussion, though, we get Emma Watson, who played Hermione Granger, offering empty pieties. "I want my trans followers to know that I and so many other people around the world see you, respect you, and love you for who you are." Radcliffe's statement was longer, but also offered no advice for navigating this legal and cultural thicket. Why is it a legal thicket as well? You mean anyway? This should just be a culture issue, and yet it's been so virulent. The activists have been so poisonous that they've managed to get their issue backed into law and destroyed many people's lives with it.
I mean, if you're using your mental illness to attack people with the legal system, you've got to question what is actually wrong with you. I'm sorry, but I have very little sympathy anymore for these kinds of activists.
Yeah, no, they just make their lives and everyone else's lives worse, the activists.
Yeah, they're like poison to the culture that they exist in.
Absolutely. And again, Radcliffe's empty piety is transgender women are women. It's clear that we need to do more to support transgender and non-binary people, not invalidate their identities and not cause further harm. It's like, yep, well done. It reads like the banner outside the Soviet shop, just repeating some empty Marxian platitude to divert the eyes of the security services. It does absolutely nothing to help. But then it's not... There are a lot of people approaching this issue in a sort of knee-jerk fashion, and one story that's come out is this. Emma Watson has said she will return to Harry Potter if J.K. wasn't involved. J.K. Rowling made Watson's name, not the other way round. She'd do well to remember that. So this really blew up across the conservative sphere, and absolutely, I get it, right? You're jumping on Watson for what is a spectacularly ungrateful attitude. You know, she made you a multi-millionaire, ensured you never have to do an honest day's work in your life. Show a bit of gratitude. But when I tried to actually track down a source for the claim that she said this, it turned out to be completely made up by an online gutter journalism site. So this is modern day journalism, you know, just throw some absolute BS out there. Someone will pick it up, goes viral on Twitter. You get your clicks and views. So because of that, I'm not even going to give them the publicity and name them. But they said in the article, according to trusted and proven sources. Now, I'm beginning to learn in this business that is journalist speak for we pulled it out of our festering rectum, and it disgusts me. And just finally, for those who may have forgotten, Harry Potter did face significant backlash when the book came out, particularly from more religious communities. And just one criticism that I've pulled up to give an example of this is you can find here. The 7-book series depicting the magical adventures of a young wizard and his friends was removed from the library because of their content. The Reverend Dan Rahil, a pastor at the Roman Catholic parish school, wrote in an email. These books present magic as both good and evil, which is not true, but in fact a clever deception. The curses and spells used in the books are actual curses and spells, which, when read by a human being, risk conjuring evil spirits into the presence of the person reading the text, the email states.
That doesn't serve to put me off. I'm sorry, but that sounds really cool.
Okay.
If that were actually
Dr.
true.
Evil over here. Yeah, no, I get that.
Sorry, I'm a psychologist. It comes with the territory.
But I do just want to point out that Harry Potter has stayed the same. You know, the only alteration I think that was made for the text was they changed one of the spells from enervate to re-enervate, because Rowling discovered that enervate means the opposite of revive. I think that's the only change that was made to it, in British English at least. And yet it's gone from being opposed by the religious right in the early 2000s to the fanatical left in the 2020s. And that just really points out who the power structure aligns with and who the oppressive, bigoted, pain in the rear end forces are that are going to try and restrict your enjoyment of.
I do remember in my younger days, I saw the sort of religious right as my bitter enemies, because they disliked the books I read, the music I listened to. They wanted to ban pretty much violent video games. These were all the things I enjoyed. And
they often couldn't distinguish between a person who said they were a witch and an actual witch. That was the thing which really got me.
Yeah, and now I've come to realise that, you know, the religious right is actually, they're the good guys now. The whole thing is flipped.
That's how the culture has shifted, yeah. No, I agree, absolutely. That's generally where we've got to here. And that's why I think it is important to talk about Harry Potter and to talk about literature and so on, because so much of culture is related to it. And I think we very readily say, oh no, that's just kid stuff, I'm not going to worry about it. And meanwhile, the other side, usually the left, just sort of sneaks in there and says, good, I'm going to take advantage of all of that. So that's why, while I have been at the Lotus Eaters, I have spoken a lot about culture and even things you might consider to be children's stories. As far as the schedule is set at the moment, this is actually my last appearance on the podcast of the Lotus Eaters. So viewers may not know that I will be leaving the Lotus Eaters, but I will still be contributing as a writer and appearing on videos, so you won't be rid of me just yet. So thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you for watching that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters. If you enjoyed that, you can sign up and become a member on our website to access our premium content. For instance, the most recent contemplations from Josh and John talking about the wisdom of Wabi Sabi. If you're interested in following Josh on social media, you can find him on Getter at Josh_firm. Thank you and goodbye.